Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. This is probably going to be one of the last two times you hear us as Honest Faith Conversations.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that at the end of the second episode. But anyway, welcome. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's finally talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Spoiler alert, if you have not yet been able to go out and see it, I know it's been extremely difficult to avoid spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi, primarily because people like spoiling Star Wars, and they don't particularly like this one, which I find a little odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so spoiler alert. Yeah, and with that being said, this is going to be a two-part episode, so this is part 1 of 2. Yes. You would begin listening here and then move on to our second episode where we will finish off our conversation about Star Wars The Last Jedi and all of the things that we found applicable to what we talk about in our podcast from The Last Jedi.
Well, not all the things. I think there's a couple of things that we could talk more about, but other people have talked about them, so we didn't want to rain on anybody's parade.
So, we'll let you know when the two-part episode starts and when to switch over and, all that fun stuff.
Yes.
So, let's go on with our review and summary. My summary is this. How to do this. Well, again, we did give a spoiler alert, so
That's true, okay. Yeah.
So, there are 3 different plot lines in this. We have Rey with Luke, sort of reluctantly getting him to train her, and Luke reluctantly training her. And then we have Poe Dameron and the fleet with General Leia, and they're running away from the First Order, and the First Order is kind of hitting them pretty hard. And, they're still kind of running.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the third plot would be the casino planet with Finn and Rose.
Yes.
Good thing I remembered what their names were.
Yes,
so.
I was in the middle of looking it up because I was like, oh no, I don't know if he knows the name, so I was gonna look up Rose's name, but he remembered. Okay.
Yes,
so
Finn and Rose on the casino planet, and they are looking for code breakers so that they could break into the First Order's starship and help the fleet.
Yep, that's a pretty good. My summary. Oh, did you want to go into review first, or did you want me to do a summary real quick?
Do summary real quick.
My summary, I guess I'll just add more to it. My summary is that this Star Wars movie is not like the rest. So that's why there's some controversy around it, but which is funny because the movie previous to this, people were like, it's too much like the other Star Wars movies. So then they went in the opposite direction, but now it's like they feel like it's not
Star Wars enough.
Yeah, I don't know. And we can't ever please anybody. But anyway, so I guess that would be my summary.
I think it's a little hard to summarize.
It is because there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's really hard to summarize it with the 3 plot points, but...
My review is that I loved it. I really enjoyed this Star Wars movie. I think it really recaptured what Star Wars was for me, and I think it's because it went in a new direction, because they did something different. A lot of people are comparing it to Empire, but, if you really break things down to its very basest plot points, then yes, you can compare almost anything to anything else. And yes, he does kind of take some of the same plot points as Empire, but I really don't think that it is Empire. There's a lot more here than there was in Empire.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really did enjoy it. I really thought that the visuals were fantastic. It was a visually pleasing movie, very visually pleasing movie.
And there's that one scene where the crash.
Oh yeah.
That was just stunning.
With the complete silence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you heard, I don't know about you guys, but when we saw it in the theater, like the audience went,
because they felt the sound went out.
Yes, it was awesome. But anyway.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think this is. I don't have very many negative things to say about it. The main negative things that I would say about it are that I think there were way too many CG creatures in there that were not
necessary.
Not that they were not necessary, but that we're still not to the point where CG is done well enough that you can say, "Oh yeah, that was real for sure."
Yeah.
Unless like cars can be CG'd very well, but things like animals and living things, not very well.
Yeah. My review is I too liked it. In fact, since we saw it a couple weeks after most people saw it, I left the theater thinking, I don't understand why so many people don't like it. Like, I don't understand why so many people don't, because I truly did like walk away and I was like, that was a great movie. Like, I didn't think it was too slow. I know a lot of people thought that the casino was a little bit too slow and just drug on. I didn't think so at all, but whatever.
I think it did provide the necessary breaks, and I think it gave Rian Johnson, since it was the C plot, gave Rian Johnson the chance to say what he wanted to say with Star Wars. And he did very topical kind of conversation with that piece, but we'll talk about that here in just a second.
And I just think that maybe people don't like, when they see a movie like Star Wars, they don't want like current, like real world political ideas like being tossed in there, but maybe that's why people didn't like it. But I don't know. I digress.
Yeah, we can talk more about that at the end there, but let's jump into it. I really think that Rian Johnson here with the entire movie is really saying that there is a new way of telling a story that is kind of proclaiming the death of modern storytelling. Long live modern storytelling. And I think is really kind of, and I think there was a lot of little pieces in there that he threw in that really showed that, we can't keep going with the same story. We can't keep going with the same way that we've been doing things over and over and over again.
Well, and like, let's face it, it gets boring and predictable.
Yeah, it does. And that's essentially what Star Wars had been for so long. And the reason why Star Wars has stood the test of time, let's not talk about the prequels, but the original three, A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, that they were all based in this very archetypal type setting of good versus evil, of black and white. And I think that was one of the main things that people had an issue with here in Last Jedi, was that it was not clear cut, that it was very gray. And I think that on both sides, especially with the New Order, is that First Order. Sorry,
that's okay.
I'm thinking in terms of New World Order, but with the First Order, that they are very gray, that there are some things that they want that aren't necessarily bad. And then there are some things that the Resistance wants that are necessarily bad.
Yeah, aren't necessarily good.
Exactly. But I think that Rian Johnson does a really good job of dismissing old tropes. And I think that this can very much be seen in Luke and Rey's storyline. And I think this is very true to the way that modern storytelling goes. And it also gives a nod to A New Hope as well, with the basic nobody on the edge of the galaxy ends up becoming this hero of the galaxy, and turns out that he wasn't a nobody all along, kind of thing. And this is what I think Luke says throughout the movie, is that he didn't want to be this legend, but that he did. In New Hope, you saw that he wanted to be this legend. He wanted to be, more than just this moisture farmer on Tatooine, that he wanted to be off there in the wars. He wanted to
Yep.
join the Empire or join the Resistance, and he found his friends in the Resistance and Rebellion. Sorry, they were the Rebellion at that time. I'm going to go off with names here. Make sure that I'm correct. Was that basically what he was saying throughout the entire movie was that legends are nobodies. That we are normal human beings too. That I am not this legend that everybody made me out to be. That I just really wanted to be a regular, everyday human being.
Yeah.
And I think that he realized this, especially after his whole wanting to kill Kylo Ren because of the power that was dangerous.
Yep.
Was that he felt the darkness in him, and he felt that, it could set off this entire other thing, which he inevitably did because he thought about killing him. And if he had just continued training him I think Rey kept telling him throughout the entire movie was, if you had just trained him like you were going to in the first place,
Yeah.
then, none of this would have happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I think that Luke, hid a lot of stuff away from him, and he didn't, it boils down to communication. He didn't actually talk to him.
Yeah, he really should have talked to him, but I think one of the major points for him was for Mark Hamill, I think, really delving into the character. You saw a lot of PTSD in him. You saw a lot of, he knew that there was darkness even in himself.
Oh, yeah.
That he was running from. And this is the reason why he ran away. This is the reason why he didn't continue study, was because he was afraid of encountering the darkness again in his own life. And I think that Rian Johnson did a great way of showing the viewers this instead of just telling them.
Well, and you can see, too, that Luke also feels responsible for putting the darkness back in the world.
Yeah.
Because he's the one that, for the most part, trained Kylo. So
Ben Solo.
So he also feels a little guilty, too.
Well, I also think that I'm not sure if this is confirmed fact or not about Rey, is it was a bit of a throwaway line, and I know that people are freaking out about the throwaway line from Kylo to Rey saying, well, the truth about your parents is that they were just junk traders who sold you for more drinking money, which I'm not completely sure that was 100% factual accurate.
Yeah, I'm not convinced either. I know a lot of people are convinced, but I'm just not. I don't know. That's just me. And
I mean, considering that George Lucas did kind of change that Luke was a nobody from nowhere to being, he was part of this noble family with the high midichlorian count.
Well, he literally changed it. He wasn't like this to begin with, but now all of a sudden,
yeah, he is Darth Vader's son.
Because at the very beginning, he during the first movie, he wasn't planning on Vader and Luke being related at all. Heck, he wasn't even planning really on Leia and Luke being related.
Which is why they had the awkward kiss.
Yep, exactly. But anyway, so that's kind of flying by the whatever it's called.
But I think that this is something that Rian Johnson is also throwing back into this movie, and which is also a nod to New Hope, which is that nobodies can be legendary. That that even the biggest changes can come from the smallest places in the universe.
And I think that's why they also shot that scene of the little boy.
Exactly. At the very end was that saying that even from him, he can bring order to the universe.
Yep.
He can bring balance. And that it's not about prophecies. It's not about being legendary. It's not about all of this other stuff. And I think this is something that Rian Johnson kind of turned on its head a little bit in The Last Jedi. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on. But I think that something else that he really took to show this was that the entire time the good guys weren't gaining any footholds.
No.
That this was, in essence, bringing them down throughout the entire thing, is that they started off, having won this gigantic battle and killing the 10 times as big Death Star. And I think that they took very heavy losses in the very beginning to show that this is not one of those movies.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why people were having issue with it too, was because it, like, the rebels never did, like...
They're the resistance in this movie.
Oh, I'm sorry. The resistance never did get back up to where they were before. Like, they were clearly losing.
Yeah.
And they kept on talking about that too. Like, a lot of people died. Like, where are we going to get more people? Like, we got to recover, so...
And I think this is one of the big things, especially when Poe comes back from that first battle there, is that General, I keep wanting to call her Princess Leia, but she's General Leia in this movie. Is that General Leia says to Poe is that you can't just jump in your X-Wing and blow stuff up. And that I think is that right there, Rian Johnson giving a new way of storytelling there is that the good guys don't have to win. And are they really good guys? And I'll talk about that here in just a second, but I really think that this is essential to his storytelling, is that it's living to fight another day is winning too. Yeah. And I think that's essential throughout this entire movie, is saying that, you really gotta, pick your battles, that there's a more emphasis on strategy rather than violence throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. I think that, that Poe needs to realize that if you can't win, like, you don't, it's not always good to die trying to win, because if everybody's dead, then how are they going to stop the evil forces?
Well, I think this
is
something...
why it's so important to live another day.
Yeah, well, I think this is something that that the Admiral was trying to teach him as well.
Yeah.
Was that, look, you got to listen, and that's why she didn't tell him her plot, her plan to get to this planet all along, was because he would have tried to do something stupid to go make sure that they got to the planet safely. Like, draw them off with his X-Wing or something.
Yep.
Which it wouldn't. He would have gotten more people killed. And I think this is what Laura Dern's character, the Admiral, was trying to do throughout the entire movie. And I know that a lot of people had issue with her in the movie. And I think this is the reason why. It was because she was trying to teach him in a different way. Is that I think that's the same reason why General Leia told him the same thing, was that no, you're grounded until such time, until I determine that you can go back out again, until you're ready for this. Is that they're trying to tell him there's more of an emphasis on strategy now more than violence, and especially when if you study war tactics and stuff like this, and you play real time strategy games or anything else like that. You know that when you're low on numbers, that you gotta focus more on defense. You gotta focus more on building up your numbers or making strategic strikes somewhere, because you gotta make sure that you're doing what you're doing. Well,
you can't just go all Leroy Jenkins and just toss everybody out there, because you're gonna come back and there's got to be nobody left.
Exactly, and that's why Rose's sister was killed, and they lost all of their bombers. Yeah. They don't have any bombers now.
Yeah, which is why they had to retreat. But anyway.
Exactly. And sorry, I entitled my next point here "Hang the DJ," and that's a reference to a Black Mirror episode, but it's also a reference to a song as well that was featured in that Black Mirror episode. But a lot of people had a problem with DJ, with Benicio del Toro in the movie, and I can tell you that Benicio del Toro in the movie did pull me out of the experience a little bit, because I'm like, hey, look, there's Benicio del Toro. Yeah. And it did pull me out a bit, but I think that he had a lot of good points to say, and that was a good thing for him, that character to be in a movie. And I think that what he was saying was not just because he was there and going to turn on them and they needed to be ingratiated to him, but I think really, if you sat there and listened to what his speech said, was that there are no good and bad guys. And I think this is essential to that whole C plot line, was that these are the rich people that are in the universe or in that galaxy. And they made all of their money off of selling weapons to both the good and the bad guys. Yep. Was that they sold weapons to the First Order. They sold weapons also to the Resistance. That they're not going to discriminate because war makes them money.
Well, and that's exactly what happens in real life, too.
Is that, there are no good or bad guys. and especially in modern wars, that line has become very gray, and it's become about, oh, well, America's the good guy because we stand for American values, which are Christian values, which could not be farther from the truth, but we're not going to go into that today.
But still, like, bringing up, I mean, America does do that thing. Like, America several times has helped and aided people very strategically, like who they wanted to, depending on who they wanted to win. But then that group will then turn around and use those same weapons on Americans.
Well, and you have this whole Iran-Contra deal that, during the 90s, 80s and 90s, that really threw off our view in the entire world, is that people saw us as this. We are the war machine, that we become rich off of wars. And that's what we had been doing. And that's the reason why I think we ended up in Iraq again. That's why we were in Afghanistan, was because we were going to be into a recession.
Yep.
And, 2008 happened, and President Obama really was faced with an uphill battle trying to recover our economy. And he was trying to do that without starting new wars, without doing those things. And it did take him longer than he wanted to get us out of Iraq. And I think this is something that maybe 45 is trying to do, is to get us into another war so that our economy is booming again.
But why with North Korea? Like, how dumb? How dumb? Anyway.
Yeah, sorry, we're not going to talk about that.
No.
But I really think that DJ had a good point in this movie, and I think it's really showing that the old way of storytelling is dead. Is that there is no more black and white, that we can't just keep on with the black and white stuff because it's doing harm, because nothing in life is black and white.
No.
Is that it's a very gray area. And so it's to this point of very moral relativism that we get into in the Star Wars episode, is that I think this more than ever is taking a chance to risk basically everything that is Star Wars of the black and white, to say, this isn't black and white as you think it is. It's actually really gray.
Yeah.
I think may even set up a chance for Gray Jedi in Episode 9, but
and if you think
that's
about
a completely different story.
When people view the world as being very black and white, that's kind of a like sophomoric idea.
Yeah.
Like the world is more complicated than that. It always has been, and I think that's also why DJ brought it up. Like sorry, but the world isn't as cut and dry as you thought it was.
Exactly. And why, he made a deal to get out of being imprisoned by the First Order, was like, I don't care. I don't have a dog in this fight.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that I live to see another day.
Exactly. Which, granted, it did make him a pretty bad guy, because he kind of left Finn and Rose out to dry. But, like he said, he didn't have a dog in the fight, which I'm pretty sure he's not going to be back in Episode 9. Benicio del Toro just had the one-shot deal, maybe. If he does, I'd be very surprised if he shows up in Episode 9.
Yeah, I think it depends on where they want to go with it. If they just want to be like, he was there to teach him a life lesson, see you later, I could see that happening. But I can also see it like people being upset and like having, trying to show that him redeem himself.
Yeah. And I think that, Luke was very gray throughout the entire movie. In fact, his Jedi robes, he wore that cloak over his robes, which was gray. And I think that that went to show it as well, was that his whole thing was that, no, don't go to the dark side, but he was also very gray about it throughout the entire thing.
Yep. Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and then talk about the Christian symbols in The Last Jedi. And I just laugh because, in America, we see Christian symbolism in movies all the time. Well, Superman.
They're the ones who
Yeah.
buy tickets to movies, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, because, well, we're the largest populace in the United States right now, so
Yeah.
that's why. Of course, anytime it happens, I kind of roll my eyes. For example, when Luke vanished, or, I guess, entered the Force, became a Force ghost, or...
Yeah, became one with the Force.
Yes, that was super corny to me, and I just rolled my eyes. But I know so many people were like, "That was such a cool moment!" Like, here he was, like, just ascending into heaven, is what they saw it as. And
Well, it was more being at peace with the Force, I think.
oh yeah, no, I definitely think that's what it was. But a lot of people were like,
Yeah.
drawing parallels with just ascending versus actually dying.
Well, yeah, where being shot at and then he was resurrected. No, that was a Force projection. He wasn't shot at.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep. It was all just a.
It was all a dream.
Yeah. And then also when Yoda came back and started speaking to him, which, like, can I just say, thank goodness they didn't do the CGI for Yoda. But anyway.
No, he was the original trilogy Yoda, which was fantastic.
Yep, yeah. But when he came and he spoke to Luke, I mean, again, that's like the God figure coming down and giving advice, like trying to show him the way, lead him to the right path, pointing out his faults. Again, the Christian symbolism there that we've seen in many movies before. And something that I just wanted to bring up too, just real quick, and I think we could talk a lot more about this one, is I had to laugh at that scene where Luke is all up in arms about the books and all up in arms about, keeping everything relevant and keeping everything like it is. And Yoda's just like, well, have you actually read the books? Have you? No. Have you? How much has he actually studied? And
Page turners exactly they are not.
Yes. Exactly. And that again is very parallel to a lot of the Christians in the United States, well, actually around the world. They will be up in arms defending what they think to be true, but yet in reality, they haven't really read the full scriptures.
Well, here's one that I think that people think is in the Bible, but is not actually in there. Is hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? It's not in the Bible.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Well, and I think this is a major point here, which I think is fantastic, is that Luke is basically the evangelical or fundamentalist equivalent of a Jedi. Mm-hmm. Is that he got barely any training.
Yep.
And yet here he is, a Jedi master.
Yep. Defending all the books, defending a religion that he hasn't truly taken the time to study. Just because you take one class once does not make you an expert.
Well, yeah. He had like a total of 48 hours with Yoda?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm assuming that he maybe learned a little bit, after the first trilogy. Obviously, I mean, he made a school, but that's another thing that cracks me up. He started a Jedi school without actually reading the Jedi texts.
Well, that's kind of like those evangelical or fundamentalist churches that start these colleges, or they start these Bible schools, and they're not accredited. They're not accredited because the people who are teaching you have no knowledge of the things that they're teaching on.
No, they too have taken one class, and now they think they're experts, and now they think they're qualified to teach you.
Like the 60% of people that you battle with on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, really, do we, Yoda kind of points out, do we really need these books? I mean, we find out later that Rey has them, because she truly does want to study it and learn more about it like a good pupil. But he's like, do we really need them? You never read them.
Yeah.
Do we really need them? And I know this is going to be very controversial, but do we really need holy books and these scriptures from any religion to actually know what makes a good person.
And I think this is one of the great things about this movie is that, like I said, is that Rian Johnson is saying that there's a new way to telling stories. Mm-hmm. That this is very ancient way of telling stories. That stories are there to give us moral guidance, and that nothing is black and white. Yeah. Is that nothing can be black and white in these stories because we need to see the gray. We need to see exactly where those lines are.
Well, and if you think about it, the light, as we know it in the Star Wars universe, like the one person who should know more about the light than anybody else, Luke, hasn't
read the books.
No! Like, I know I keep bringing that up. I just want to, keep driving that home that it happens a lot in the Christian world, too. Like, you see these pastors who pick and choose which texts they want to teach, and they never ever touch, certain parts of the Bible. They never ever look at those because they feel like it's irrelevant. However, you have to look at the whole book in order to get the actual gist of what it's trying to say. And, I mean, no one ever really reads them. I mean, the only people who actually do read the Bible, front and back, are people who do want to actually study it.
Well, and I think this is something that a lot of people do, is that they don't see the story for the words. Is that a lot of people do end up reading the Bible. People do read stories and stuff like this, but the whole point of the story completely misses them. Is that, well, he said this here, and Jesus said he made them male and female, and, well, that entire passage was about Pharisees trying to trap Jesus in giving the legality of divorce. And the whole thing about divorce is that divorce was a legal matter. And that's what Jesus was saying, was that this is a legal matter. I am a religious preacher. And so what does your law say? There you go. There's what the law says.
Well, and that's not the only time Jesus brought up that, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's.
Yeah. What does the law say?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I can justify separating church and state, because even Jesus was like...
Well, and I think this is something that is really interesting to me, that I actually wrote into my modern retelling of the gospel story was with Esperanza. There's that one scene where Jesus says this. And so I took it and I'm like, how can a modern day Messiah have something to say about this? And took the modern money, which has on the front George Washington.
Yeah.
A $1 bill, you have George Washington on the front, and on the back you have printed, "In God We Trust." Which, exactly, this is what I think Jesus was saying here, was that give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And so, here in my story, I had Esperanza say, give to Washington what is Washington's, and give to God what is God's. And they have both names on it. And that's exactly what, it's saying, is that it's your decision.
Yeah.
It's not something that should be legally set in stone. It's very gray. It's a very gray thing. And I think this is something that Jesus himself in the story is saying, that there are gray areas. Everything is a gray area. And this is the biggest thing that you can learn, is just to love other people. And I think this is something that Rey knows, is already a part of Rey as her character, is that she doesn't want to hurt people. She wants to make a difference. She wants to make sure that people are okay. That's why she doesn't train to kill Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. She wants to turn him.
Well, and we find that on early in her character too, even with the last movie, when she rescued BB-8. She didn't attack that one guy. She was just no, I'll take him. He's mine. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
And one thing that, if we're gonna compare her and Luke to their training, she really wanted to learn the ins and outs, and you could tell she was thirsty for knowledge, actual knowledge about the Jedi and about the Force. She wanted to learn it all. But I think it's funny that she went to Luke, who when he was training, just wanted to know, I want to know how to use the Force. Like, I want to know how to fight.
Yeah.
Like, that was his, like, focus. Like, he didn't really want to learn, like, the why about it. He just wanted to know the how.
And I think this is precisely what I was saying earlier with the strategy over violence, is that I think this is what Rey wants to be able to make sure that she is okay rather than losing control, like she did in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Is that she wants to learn how to really understand herself and understand the universe. And I think that's essentially what religion is meant to do. Religion is meant to show you yourself and how to be a real human being rather than teaching you how to use this against somebody else, how to beat somebody. That's not what it's about. It's not about violence. It's about the strategy. It's about learning who you are and how that fits into the universe and how that fits into the larger picture of everything.
Yep. So, should we take a little break and then stop this so we can go to our second set of episode?
Sure. So, again, this is the end of episode 1 of 2. And we will be back with episode 2 of 2 with us finishing off our conversation on Star Wars The Last Jedi.